Hello and welcome everybody to the first episode of Projectozoid podcast. What are we going to talk about today? Well, I think you won't be surprised if I say that our topic will be what is project management? So let's get to it. What is in fact project management and who is a project manager and what is he doing? A disclaimer to all project professionals. This podcast is intended to an audience who doesn't know much about project managementing, so don't be surprised by the rudimentary explanations. There you go. We get this out of the way, so let's see. We cannot talk about project management and project managers without a project, right? Bam! Another question immediately comes up. Zsolt, what is a project? Well, here we can go by the book definition, which says a project is defined as a sequence of tasks that must be completed to attain a certain outcome. According to the Project Management Institute, the term project refers to any temporary endeavor with a definite beginning and an end. Depending on its complexity, of course, it can be managed by a single person or hundreds of persons. But let's see what are the characteristics of a project. A project is set of an independent tasks that have a common goal. Projects have the following characteristics. Point number 1, a clear start and end date. There are projects that last several years, but a project cannot go on forever. It needs to have a clear beginning, a definite end, and an overview of what happens in between. Point number 2. A project creates something new. Every project is unique, producing something that did not previously exist. A project is a one-time, one-off activity, never to be repeated exactly the same way again. Point number 3. A project has boundaries, as we all do, right? A project operates within certain constraints of time, money, quality, and functionality. We'll see more about that later. Point number 4. A project is not business as usual. Projects are often confused with processes. A process is practically a series of routines, predefined steps to perform a particular function, let's say expense reimbursement approvals. This is not a one-off activity. It determines how a specific function is performed every single time. But let's take something more personal and more relatable from our daily lives. How many of you have planned any holidays? I'm pretty sure quite a lot of you, especially that now it is the summer holiday season. And I hope that you are having, or you had, or you're gonna have a nice holidays. Anyway, so the first thing you do is to define the destination and the start date and the end date. You have the scope and the timeline. Remember point number 1. Let's say your holiday has more stops. For example, you're leaving from Prague to Berlin, then to Paris, and all the way on to Rosenborg, Netherlands, or Oslo. You need to buy the gasoline if you're going by car, or the plane tickets if you're flying. You're going to make your budget by calculating costs related to travel like gasoline, hotels, food and drinks, which are your known and fixed expenses. Plus, if you're really clever about it, you calculate at least a 20% emergency fund in case the beer is more expensive in Germany than France. Or is it the other way around? Well, let me know if yes. Anyway, now you have a project budget. This relates to point number 3. A project has boundaries, and point number 2 and 4. As this is not business as usual, you don't do this all the time, it's something new, it creates new experiences, new memories, new friendships. And this already made you a project manager of your whole life. Now you understand why I always say everything in life is a project, or in fact, life is a huge program with many small subsequent projects. But actually, let's learn project management from history. What can we learn about project management from Genghis Khan? Yes, it's not Genghis Khan. So, Shah Alauddin Muhammad, ruler over the kingdom of Khwarezmia, which is in modern day Iran and Central Asia, somewhere in the 13th century, so long time ago, long before podcasts. So this ruler was actually the richest ruler in Central Asia, and his nation was home to the vibrant cities of Samarkand and Bukhara. One fine day, this Shah received 3 strange-looking ambassadors. They carried a message from their ruler, the great Khan of the Mongols. The Shah's uncle, the governor of the city Otrar, had imprisoned and executed a caravan of Mongol traders and stolen their goods. The Khan has sought compensation and a peace treaty. I am master of the lands of the rising sun, while you rule those of the setting sun, the message read. Let us conclude a firm treaty of friendship and peace. But the Shah was unmoved. He had heard of the barbarian warlord from the steppes of Mongolia. How dare he consider himself an equal of the richest emperor in the world? He beheaded one of the messengers, shaved the other's heads, and sent them back. Prepare for war, he told his generals and his beloved son Jalal-ad-Din. Several months passed, but the enemy did nothing. The Shah forgot about the incident and returned his focus to his own domestic squabbles. One day, he received reports that an army had arrived in the southern part of his kingdom. From their description, he realized that these were the Mongols. He sent out his son Jalal-ad-Din and his elite cavalry to meet the barbarians in battle. In a few days' time, the son has returned triumphant. Father, it was an army of 20,000 men, his son told him. All the soldiers were weak and malnourished. The Mongols seemed to be a pathetic race. The Shah rejoiced. That would teach the upstart Khan a lesson. But in a few weeks' time, he received a new message. The Mongols had arrived on Otrar, was under siege. Infuriated, the Shah led his armies north to relieve the besieged city. But before he could arrive, Otrar has already had fallen, and the Mongols had killed his uncle by pouring molten silver down his eyes and ears. The Shah vowed vengeance and readied his forces, but then he received a message. The city of Bukhara had fallen too. Who has betrayed me? The Shah asked. It is not betrayal, sire, the messenger said. The great Khan himself has taken over the city. He has come from the north at the head of an enormous army. Impossible, the Shah said. It is impossible to cross the giant desert of Kizilkum. By the way, the giant desert of Kizilkum is the 15th largest desert in the world. Anyway, the Shah hurried to save his capital Samarkand, but by the time he returned, the Mongols had razed his beautiful capital and slaughtered all its citizens. He escaped with his life. Only with his life. Now the wealthiest ruler in Central Asia was a poor and broken man. He died of illness on an island on the Caspian Sea. Practically, the Shah had underestimated the organizational prowess and tactical genius of Genghis Khan, but we can learn 3 key project management principles from this chapter in history. First lesson is take your time to plan. An action committed in anger is an action doomed to failure, used to say Genghis Khan. Well, Genghis Khan did not plunge himself headlong into battle on a whim. He made a concrete strategy and detailed plans. The crossing of the large desert of Kizilkum was an unprecedented project. However, the Mongols used local nomads to chart out a map of all the oases in the desert. Then, with the help of astronomers, they charted out a schedule correlated to the phases of the moon. And so they managed, with a solid plan, to cross the desert, which was considered something that you cannot do, right? Lesson number 2. Do a trial with a minimum viable product, or MVP. Practically, despite having a much larger army than their enemies, the Mongols were not overconfident. They sent out a small column, 20,000 soldiers of their 100 troops, to get a feel of the enemy. They used this initial attack to understand their rivals and to identify weaknesses in their own strategies. Then they took the same pattern and implemented successfully. Lesson number 3. Implement rapidly. Well, Genghis Khan said, and it's something that I live by, if you're afraid, don't do it. If you're doing it, don't be afraid. Many times, projects just drag on for years and years with no end in sight. The stakeholders lose their patience and the team loses their morale. Genghis Khan, however, was decisive when he was ready to attack. The cities of Otrar, Bukhara and Samarkand fell in rapid succession. Khwarezmia did not stand a chance against this rapid implementation of brute force. The Mongol invasion was a dark chapter in human history, but the strategic genius of Genghis Khan is undeniable. And from such tales in history, there is much that one can learn of, and hopefully you will still hear many of these stories on Projectozoid podcast. But for now, this was the first episode. Let me know how you liked it. Go on Facebook, look for the Project Podcast Facebook page. Let's see if you have any kind of suggestions, collaboration ideas, topics to discuss about. Just drop me an email on the Facebook page or joel.garfalvi@gmail.com and we can see what it will be. Hopefully you liked the first episode of my podcast and you're looking forward for the next ones. Wishing you all a beautiful day and go on project managementing. Thank you.